Well, COVID vaccinations and mixed doses have raised many questions around travel, from domestic flights right to international border crossings. And many of you at home, well, you have been sending us your questions. We're trying to get you the answers you need. And joining us right now to look at a few of the issues raised by viewers just like yourself, we're now joined by Martin Firestone. He is the president of Travel Secure, joins us right now in Toronto. Martin, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So listen, as we say, we have a lot of questions here around travel and vaccination. So I'm going to begin here with the very first question. And this comes from Maria. She asks, do most countries recognize mixing of two mRNA vaccines? For example, receiving Pfizer for your first dose followed by a Moderna, or vice versa?
Most do, but I have to say the situation is extremely fluid. So if I had to give any kind of direction, I would say you need to check with what country you're going to, whether it's their public health system or the travel agent or the airlines or whoever, to find out what their position is, because no one wants to travel that whole way and then find out they can't get in at that time.
Susan has another question, and this is what she's asking right now. She says, I am fully vaccinated. I'm traveling on American Airlines domestically on August the 9th. She asks, must I be tested for COVID prior to my flight?
Yeah, interesting question. And I'm not sure what domestic is, whether she's in the U.S. or Canadian. If it's domestic provincially, of course, we have no issues and no need for any sort of vaccinations or tests in that sense. But let's assume she's coming from the U.S. and wanting to come into Canada. Of course, Monday's the big day, and you are going to need to show fully vaccination, and you are also going to have to show a negative COVID test 72 hours in advance before you enter the country. So possibly that's where she's coming from.
Now, the next question is interesting because, as we know, there are a number of Canadians who study in the United States. And this is from one parent by the name of John. And this is what John is asking you right now, Martin. He says, September is fast approaching. It is very difficult to find information for Canadian parents who need to drive their child to a school in the U.S. Can both parents bring the child, or only one of them? Would all three have to pay $185 for a COVID test before going?
Yeah, the key word here is drive. I'm not sure one parent, two parent, or three kids or whatever are going to drive, because right now that U.S. border is closed. Our next chance of seeing what's going to happen there is August 21st. But at this point, I don't think they're driving anywhere. I think if they're taking their children to school, they're hopping on a plane and getting there. And at that point, yes, each and every one of them are going to need a negative COVID test 72 hours in advance at potentially $180 a piece. And guess what? When they come back from the U.S. into Canada, they're going to need, if they're there longer than the 72 hours from the previous test, they're going to need another set of COVID tests at $180 a piece. So it gets quite expensive.
Is there a requirement to isolate once you arrive in the United States and once again back to Canada?
Well, at this point in the U.S., of course, you're not driving over. And if you're flying over, as many have done since last October, there is no quarantine necessary at this point. When the U.S. border does open up for Canadians traveling south, I suspect they will also require fully vaccinated individuals to prove it at the border. But right now, nothing.
Okay, let's go to another question here. This is from Shirley, and this is what she's asking you, Martin. She says, my granddaughter, who is a Canadian citizen, along with her two children, ages 3 and 5, well, they want to visit for 2 weeks in August. She has been fully vaccinated. What would be the quarantine rules for them once they came here?
So the good news is that there is no quarantine rules per se. Having said that, the children that are unvaccinated can come here and do not have to quarantine, but they are not able to go into a group situation, i.e. daycare, summer camp, or schooling. So in many ways, they are somewhat quarantined, but at least it's not having to stay within a house. They just can't be congregated in large crowds.
Okay. Final question here, Martin. This is from Patricia, and she is asking the following. She says, we have booked a cruise for next April, sailing from Florida. We have received AstraZeneca/Pfizer. I am concerned to hear that cruise lines and the CDC are saying that we are not fully vaccinated and will not be able to sail. What can you tell us about this?
I hate to be the fly in the ointment, but that's the least of their problems, the mixed vaccination. Right now, Canada is under a level 4 travel advisory for cruises, which means avoid all cruises, not non-essential, all cruises. So in fact, it's impossible right now from insurers to get coverage for COVID when they are on a cruise. So I think, quite frankly, to go on a cruise right now without travel insurance is your biggest concern. Secondly, you'll have to look, of course, who is taking mixed vaccines in what countries and what ports. But we're beginning right at the beginning here. The biggest problem right now is no one at this moment can get travel insurance that will cover them for COVID if they are going on a cruise ship.
Martin, all great information to have. As we said, we continue to get a number of emails regarding travel, so perhaps you and I will speak again. But for now, thank you for this. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you for having me.
And that's Martin Firestone, president of Travel Secure.